The book of Daniel opens with the scene of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, being defeated by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Now, the invasion was earlier foretold by the prophet Jeremiah.
Therefore the Lord Almighty says this, because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. This whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
Now, after the invasion, King Nebuchadnezzar steals the best of the royal family, the nobles, and the young men, both handsome and intelligent, in order to re-educate them, or, in other words, to brainwash them into Babylonian culture and service. Now, they're treated well. They're given drink, they're given food, and they're given training by the Chaldeans for 3 years in order to prepare them to serve the Babylonian king. Now, among those taken are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, renamed Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, Daniel exemplifies holiness. He was determined not to contaminate himself with the king's wine or the king's food. In fact, he requests permission from the king's head official to abstain. Now, keep in mind, this was not a simple request. It wasn't like going to Chipotle and ordering a veggie salad rather than a carnitas burrito bowl. Daniel is a captive. He is obligated to take whatever the king's official gives to him. If you're in prison, you're stuck eating prison food. You don't get to request in and out. But Daniel is bold, and against all odds, he requests permission to abstain from anything that would cause him to compromise his faith. And God is faithful. God gives the king's head official favor and sympathy toward Daniel. But that's not the end of the story. Even though the king's head official favored Daniel, he was still afraid of the repercussions he could face if Daniel were noticeably not eating from the king's food. So Daniel proposes a test. Give my friends and me vegetarian food and water only, and see who looks healthier at the end of 10 days. And sure enough, Daniel and his friends' appearance is much greater than any of the men eating from the king's food. In addition to Daniel and his friends looking healthier and more nourished than any of the king's other men, God also gives the 4 friends knowledge and discernment in literature and learning. Daniel is even given the gift of interpreting dreams and visions. Now, when they finally met with the king, they were unlike any of the king's other servants, 10 times better in fact, and the king held them in high esteem. The central question in chapter 1 is, how can these 4 Jewish young men have gained such success in a pagan context without being tainted by it? Now, this is a very relevant question to you and me as the church today, who on the one hand want to succeed in a secular environment, while on the other hand be aware of our calling to remain faithful to the Lord. Maybe you don't face persecution, but rather, like Daniel and his friends, you face pressure to compromise your faith convictions and benefits for doing so, which makes compromising all the more tempting. How will you succeed in the world without conforming to the world's standards? Exegetical notes. Daniel 1:1 states Nebuchadnezzar's first year as king was Josiah's 3rd year. However, Jeremiah 25:1 says it was Jehoiakim's 4th year. Jeremiah was using the Egyptian calendar system, whereas Daniel was using the Babylonian calendar system that did not count a king's initial year. So the 3rd year is in harmony with the 4th year according to the Judean system of dating. In verse 7, it says that they were given new names. A key factor in the Babylonian attempt to brainwash their captives was to completely separate them from their heritage and culture. In verse 7, Daniel is changed to Belteshazzar. Daniel means God is my judge. In verse 7, Hananiah is changed to Shadrach. Hananiah means the Lord has been gracious. In verse 7, Mishael is changed to Meshach. Mishael means who is what God is. In verse 7, Azariah is changed to Abednego. Azariah means the Lord has helped. The changing of names shows the perversion of God-given names being replaced with idolatrous ones. A new name is a sign of new ownership and thus new destiny. The name changes of these four young Hebrews shows the result of Israel living in sin. They are given over to idols. Daniel, however, keeps his name throughout the book. This is in part the author showing us that Daniel did not conform to his surrounding pagan culture, but it also shows us that though we are in the world, and though we may be surrounded by a secular culture, God is still judge. In verse 12, Daniel requests only vegetables and water. Pagan food and drink may simply epitomize the pagan uncleanness associated with exile. You can see Isaiah 52:11 for more reference. This reflects the fact that what we eat and drink, like what we wear and how we speak, generally constitutes an outward expression of our self-identity and commitments. Daniel's abstinence thus symbolizes his avoiding assimilation.